A fire has been burning in this desert for 55 years. Nobody meant that. They thought it would last 2 weeks. Now satellites say it is dying. Its heat has dropped more than 75% in 3 years. Almost nobody noticed. So, why is the fire nobody could extinguish going out on its own? And why are scientists calling that bad news? It sits in the Karakum desert of Turkmenistan, 160 miles north of the capital. 4 hours of road and sand. The pit is roughly 230 feet across and about 100 feet deep. Locals call it the door to hell. Turkmenistan calls it something else now. Officially, the site is named Shining of Karakum. The government would rather you forgot the other name. This is one of the most closed countries on Earth. In 2019, it logged about 14,000 foreign tourists. Total. It also sits on the 4th largest proven gas reserves on the planet. That matters because the burning hole is made of that gas. And almost everything you have read about how this fire started cannot be verified by one single surviving document. Not one. Here is the story everyone tells. 1971. Soviet geologists drill for gas in the Karakum and hit a hidden cavern. The ground gives way. The drilling rig drops into the earth. A crater opens where the camp had been standing minutes earlier. His vicari. Methane pours out. The engineers decide to burn it off because breathing it kills and because gas fires are supposed to be short. They light it and estimate a few weeks of flame. That estimate is now wrong by more than half a century. It is a perfect story. Hubris, fire, the Soviet Union, a desert. And there is no Soviet paperwork that says it happened. Researchers who went looking found the relevant records absent, classified, or simply inaccessible. No incident report, no rig loss, no date. Turkmen geologists who worked the region tell it differently. They say the ground collapsed in the 1960s, not 71. And they say nobody set it alight until the 1980s. Under that version, the crater sat open and quiet for 20 years. 20 years is not a rounding error. It is the difference between an accident and a decision made long after the fact. Consider what that means. The most photographed hole on this planet has no confirmed birthday and no confirmed name behind it. No engineer ever claimed it. No commission ever signed off. Somebody walked to the edge, threw something burning, and vanished from history. Turkmenistan has never released an archive that settles it. In a country this closed, an unanswered question stays unanswered by design, which leaves the flame as the only witness to its own beginning. And a flame keeps no records, no dates, no confession. So if nobody can agree how this fire started, what happens when a president decides it finally has to end? 2010, the president of Turkmenistan orders experts to find a way to close the hole. The plan is quietly dropped. 3 years later, the area is declared a nature reserve. The door to hell becomes protected ground, which is its own kind of joke. January 2022. Same president, state television. He tells officials to put the flames out. This time he gives reasons. Health of people nearby, damage to the environment, and, in his words, losing valuable resources for which the country could get significant profits. That last reason is the real one. Every hour the crater burns, gas that could be sold disappears into the sky. Orders are given, committees form, and for the next several years the fire does exactly what it has always done. Nothing changes. Because putting it out is harder than it sounds. You cannot smother a crater that is being fed from below continuously. Only one person has ever stood at the bottom and looked around. In 2013, an explorer named George Kourounis went down. He wore an aluminized suit, a Kevlar harness, and carried his own air, because there is no oxygen worth breathing down there. He described it as a colosseum of fire. Not one flame, thousands of small ones, on every surface, in every direction. The sound, he said, was a jet engine, high-pressure gas burning out of rock, roaring from all sides at once. He was not there for the view. He scraped soil from the floor of a burning pit and carried the samples out. Those samples held bacteria, living, thriving, in heat and methane, and absent from the soil just outside the crater rim, which made the burning hole a small, accidental model of a planet we have not visited yet. And then the fire started dying. June 2025, an energy conference in Ashgabat. The director of the state gas company stands up and makes an announcement. The reduction, she says, is nearly threefold. Where a massive glow was once visible for miles, only faint combustion now remains. For a country that spent 15 years failing to close this thing, that is an extraordinary claim to make out loud. The official explanation is simple. In 2024, 2 wells were drilled near the crater to capture the methane before it surfaces. Drain the pressure feeding the flame, and the flame starves. It is good engineering, and it is a very good story. This time, though, somebody outside the country was watching. Satellites do not need a visa, and they had been recording for years. A flare monitoring firm called Capterio pulled the infrared record of the site. Their finding, published in 2026, was blunt. The heat coming off the crater had fallen by more than 75% in 3 years. The fire really is going out. But the curve had a problem. The dimming appears to begin before the wells were drilled. The timeline does not fit the explanation, which points at something less flattering and far more likely. The pocket of gas feeding this fire is simply running low. The eternal flame was never eternal. It was a finite volume of methane, draining at a rate nobody bothered to measure. 55 years looks like forever to a person. To a gas reservoir, it is just the length of the receipt. So the mystery resolves in the least romantic way possible. Nobody beat the door to hell. It ran out of fuel. And that should be the happy ending. It is not. It is the part that worries the people reading the satellite data. Because the flame was never the pollution, the flame was the treatment. Fire converts methane into carbon dioxide, which is the milder gas. Methane traps more than 80 times as much heat as carbon dioxide over 20 years. Burning it is a downgrade, not a disaster. When the flames shrink, the gas does not stop coming. It just stops being visible. It vents, cold and clear, into the sky. Measurements bear this out. The site averaged about 1,300 kilograms of methane an hour for 4 straight years. Then, in October 2025, it read 1,960, a near record, measured while the fire was supposedly dying. And here is the number that should keep you up. This crater is roughly 0.2% of Turkmenistan's methane. The most famous fire on Earth is 1/500th of the leak. The rest has no flame, no photographs, and no name. Next, a storm over a lake in Venezuela that fires lightning about 260 nights a year and has for centuries. Nobody fully explains why it stays in one spot. Subscribe. This channel goes where the official explanation does not survive the data.